We'll be continuing with our accentuate the negative unit. We're going to go with lesson 3, which is fraction operations. Now, this lesson will be divided into 2 videos because there's lots of information that we need to cover. The essential question for this lesson is how can I perform operations with fractions? For lessons, we're going to start off with some important vocabulary terms. And the first word you need to know is Alright, the important part of this is part of a whole. And just to jot down a couple examples, 1/2 is an example of a fraction. 4/10, or 3 and 2/5. The second term you need to be aware of is simplest form, when the numerator and denominator have no common factor other than 1. So let's look at this. If we were to take the example above, 4/10, I would need to write this in simplest form. And to do that, I need to look at both of these numbers and I need to go through my divisibility rules. And basically what I'm trying to do is to see if there is a common factor between the two of these that I can divide out. Since one of my divisibility rules tells me that if the number ends in an even number, if the last digit is an even number, then it's divisible by 2, I know that this can be reduced. So 4 divided by 2 gives me 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. So my simplest form of 4/10 is 2/5. Okay, the third and fourth term you need to know are just numerator and denominator, and I'm sure you're pretty much aware of those. You've heard those for several years. The numerator is the top portion of the fraction, and the denominator is the bottom portion of the fraction. We have 2 more terms that you're going to need to know. The first is least common denominator, and the least common denominator is the least common multiple of the denominators of 2 or more fractions. Okay, and specifically you're going to use this when you're adding or subtracting fractions. So if we had a question like this, where we had 1/2 plus 3/8, I would need to find a common denominator, and we're going to show you how to do that. But since the denominators are not the same when I'm adding, I have to rename my fractions so they are the same. And we'll show you an example of that in just a second. And the last term that you need to know for this lesson is greatest common factor. And this is the largest number that factors evenly into 2 or more larger numbers. Okay? So these are some terms that you're going to need to know as you move through this unit. Alright, let's look at the different operations of fractions. And specifically, in this lesson, we're going to talk about adding and subtracting. And then in the next video, we'll talk about multiplying and dividing. So it's nice and easy when the fractions have common denominators, whether you're adding or subtracting. If the denominator, and that's the bottom number, are the same, you simply look at the numerator and do the appropriate operation. So in this case, 1/5 plus 2/5, I'm going to add my numerators, gives me 3/5. 1 plus 2 is 3, and I keep it over the denominator, that's still the same. Okay, the second one here, I have 7/12 plus 1/12. My denominators are the same, so I'm going to add my numerators. 7 plus 1 gives me 8. I keep it over the same denominator. And then I just need to go back and make sure that it's reduced. So, again, I'm looking at my divisibility rules. Since both of these numbers, 8 and 12, end in an even number, the last digit is even, I know it's divisible by 2. Alright, so I want to ask myself, is there another factor that they have in common? All right, in this case, 4. Each of these numbers is divisible by 4. So it's kind of trial and error. You can, certainly use your divisibility rules to help you narrow down the numbers. But with more practice, it just becomes easy. But in this case, I know both of these are divisible by 4. 8 divided by 4 gives me 2, and 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. So 2/3 is my final answer here. All right, and then the very last one, 3/26 plus 5/26. Again, my denominators are the same, so I'm going to add my numerators. 3 plus 5 gives me 8. And I keep it over 26. And then I just go back and again reduce. So I'm going to run through those divisibility rules. First thing that sticks out to me is that both of these end in an even number, so I know they're divisible by 2. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 26 divided by 2 gives me 13. So I know 8/26 equals 4/13. All right, let's move on to when the denominators are not the same. Okay, these are a little trickier. If you look over to the right here, you will see the steps that we need to take. All right, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the least common denominator. So that means I need to look at the denominators that I have, and I want to find a number that they have in common, or a factor that they have in common. All right, but before I do that, I want to rewrite my problem so that the fractions are on top of one another, that they're vertically written. So I have 2/3 plus 1/5. So to find the least common denominator, I really am going to run through the multiples of these numbers and see if I can find a match. So if I think about this in my head, I'm going to say 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and you can certainly list them out to the side. And as soon as I hit one that I know is a factor of the other number, I can stop. So in this case, 15 would be my common denominator, my least common denominator. So I'm going to work on step 2 here, where I'm actually going to rename my fractions. Now that I've found the least common denominator, I need to go back and rename my fractions. So in this step, what you need to do is ask yourself, what number times, in this case 3, gave me 15? Or what did I do to 3 to get it to 15? Well, in this case, I multiplied it by 5. Because 3 times 2, multiply 2 times 5, and that gives me 10. All right, I have to do the same thing to the bottom. So 5 times what number gave me 15? 5 times 3 is 15. Sorry, my pen's acting a little crazy. So I need to do the same thing to the top. So 1 times 3, and that gives me 3. Okay, once I've renamed my fractions, checking off step 2 here, then I'm just simply going to add the numerators. So 10 plus 3 gives me 13. I keep it over my same new denominator, which in this case was 15. And then I'm just going to check to see if I can simplify. Well, since I know 13/15 is already as simple as it goes, this is my final answer. Here are some your turn questions, so go ahead and try these on your own, and then we'll review these in class tomorrow. All right, now we're going to move on to subtraction of fractions. And subtracting fractions is just the same as adding fractions, except for the fact that you're going to subtract. So when the denominators are the same, it's real simple. Always for number 2, 7 that I'm reducing. Subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, you follow the same steps that we did with adding fractions with unlike denominators. 3, 6, 9, 12. Okay, good. Well, I have a 12 already in this denominator, and so I can easily make, since this fraction already has a denominator of 12, I don't need to rename. Sorry, my pen is acting so strangely. I just need to move it over so that it's vertical from the other one. And now I'm simply going to subtract my numerators. So 8 minus 4 gives me 4. I'm going to keep my denominator of 12. 4 is a factor of 4, and 4 is also a factor of 12. So this would reduce to 1/3. And there we have our final answer. Okay, these are for you to try on your own in class tomorrow. Well, this is the end of part 1 of lesson 3. And we'll pick up with the rest of this in a separate video, so be on the lookout for that.